Critical Blast, where pop culture gets blasted.
And welcome everybody to another stream with Critical Blast. We are here tonight to talk with another crowd-funded comic book that's out there. We're going to talk with Boogie-Bot Comics about their book, Robert. That is the title, right? That's a pretty straightforward name title.
Yeah, it's pretty straightforward. There's no really like subline like subtitle or anything to it, but it's just the straight main character of the book.
We don't call him Bob?
One person in the book will actually end up trying to call him Bob.
Trying to. Okay, that sounds like there's going to be a reaction that will be fun to watch there. So tell me about Robert, because what I'm thinking, just from the preview pictures I've seen, Robert's the robot, or a robot.
Yeah, so the the main premise for Robert is that it's set in a somewhat dystopian, sort of like a steampunk, cyberpunk, like dystopian future. And this is the setting that the book happens in is actually after the events of Y3K.
Y3K.
Mm-hmm.
So we didn't fix the programming issues fully.
No, unfortunately not in this like dystopian future.
Okay, well, live and learn. It keeps programmers in business like me. So if he's a robot, he's got to be created by somebody for a purpose, or is he just one of many robots that just happen to be part of the population? Walk us through the world building here.
Yeah, so the main story for Robert as to where like the whole universe, the kind of main setting that why it takes place in the setting that it does, is that in the year 3000, Y3K happens, which means that all of Earth's technology and like basically just shuts down after a major solar flare, disrupts a lot of like Earth's tech, and a good chunk of it just completely goes offline. All the humans who are still left in this future, the majority of the population, there's not that many humans anymore, but there's a lot more robots that do a lot of like the manual labor, like cooking, driving, like just basic jobs that like all the robots do.
Okay, and what is Robert's basic job?
So Robert's job in the book is he's essentially going to be the person that we kind of like attach ourselves to as like the audience into this new world. So he's going to be kind of like the main character that we stumble across in the story, and we follow his journey throughout this whole book. But we learn bits and pieces of his role whenever the book starts to fully flesh out.
Okay, he looks to me like a robot cowboy, like a gunslinger kind of character.
Yeah, so the character that I've been heavily promoting on here has actually been there's three main characters to the story. The first major, like the main character, is Robert, and the other two characters are Charles and Eastwood.
Okay, so they are named after famous people then, for your allegories.
Yes. So the main reason as to why some of the characters are actually named after specific actors or characters of fiction is because after Y3K happens, all the humans that were basically forced to hide away in bunkers and just or like completely died out because some of the nuclear power plants couldn't sustain themselves for long. So most of the humans are gone, and all the robots have been shut off because of the solar flare. However, in this dystopian future, a miracle happens where the robots suddenly turn back on.
Aha! And is that miracle part of the plot, that there is a reason for it, or is it just a plot device to get the robots moving again?
That's the main plot device as to why like the robots are awake again. But it's gonna kind of like talk about how the robots ended up gaining some form of personality, because in the future, after the robots have been like after the robots turned off and when they regain consciousness again, they completely lose who they were in their past life. So they were programmed to be like Uber drivers. They were programmed to be chef bots or manual labor working class robots. But when the Y3K happened and they woke back up, they are now lost robots without purpose. They now have to create their own purpose, but
Ah,
they create their own purpose through a lot of Earth's media, through a lot of movies, television shows, works of fiction, and they kind of gain a personality off of the things that we've made, same as kind of how humans gain parts of their personality off of either other humans or works of fiction as well.
okay, sort of like when Wall-E in the Disney movie was watching his VHS tapes all the time, or more like when the Martian Manhunter, John Jones, in his origin, is huddled up in an apartment somewhere watching old gangster and detective films, as forming the kind of person he was going to be, a manhunter kind of person.
Exactly. So that's why most of the robots, a good chunk of the robots that wake up from this actually form factions of their own, and they figure that, well, we should, stay together. We should learn more about either what we are, who we are, or like who they want to be in this new like dystopian future. And Eastwood is actually his role in when before Y3K happens, he was actually a police bot. So that's why he has some form of like he has some form of consciousness to what his past role was, which was just a protector.
Okay. Do you have some art you can share up here and introduce us to the characters, who they are, and what they look like visually, each one of them?
Yeah, I can. I'm doing this off of my tablet. I'm not too sure if I can send you any.
Oh,
I'm not too
yeah.
sure
I'm
if I
not
can
sure if you
send
can
you.
screen share off of that either.
I'm not too sure if I can send you some pictures through Twitter. Maybe we can share them through there.
Yeah, I couldn't share them from here because it would just kill the stream. I've got an ancient laptop myself, so
Ah, okay.
I'm hosting off my phone here. But I can try. I can definitely go to the Indiegogo page, right?
Yep. On the Indiegogo page, we actually have a trailer for the book.
Indiegogo Boogie-Bot. Let's see if I get lucky and hit it up here, since I don't have the link itself. And if I don't crash the entire system, that'd be great. Come on. Something's wanting to come up here. Well, not yet, but while we're here, why don't you tell us about some of the humans that populate this place and how they interact? Are there any recurring human characters?
Yeah. So the main human character that we're going to be following along with the main three cast members is Charles, and his role in the book is actually supposed to be he's actually a mechanic, and in this sort of like new dystopian future, mechanics are actually the most human mechanics are actually the most sought after of the humans, because the robots can't fix themselves, because like the humans actually have some form of knowledge of actually how to fix like machines or like wiring and stuff like that. Some of the robots could learn, but
Yeah.
most of the knowledge is already instilled or like learned by humans. So they're kind of looked at as more of like I don't want to say a commodity. They're basically looked at as like a rarity in like the new world, but they're looked as the ones that the robots specifically need when they have like a broken limb, or like whenever they have like a when they need to reattach like limbs or need like rewiring, or just like a system reboot, essentially.
Yeah, I mean, as soon as the robots know how to fix themselves, they don't need us anymore. And well, that's disturbing. Let's see here. I'm on your Twitter. Why am I? You've got to put that link in your profile, man.
Yeah, I think on the profile I have it mostly just I need to put the link for the Indiegogo in my main like bio, but I do have it I think as the pinned post actually.
Ah, there we go. It was just the graphic hadn't filled in yet. Hashtag Comicsgate. So do you line in with Comicsgate, or are you just marketing to them and you're just crowdfunding, or do you EVS hail stream, that kind of thing?
Well, actually, I believe in the values that they've been like kind of like instilling on like most of the comic book community, and I think what they specifically stand for is just it's just indie creators that just want to make good work, and that's all I've ever wanted to do, which was just make like good comics for pretty much anybody who would want to read them if they love my artwork, and if they also to like align with that, or like I wouldn't discriminate exactly like whoever is like buying my books or with whatever side that they align themselves to. I just think if you want to support a creator and they specifically align with something, then that shouldn't necessarily be, I guess, something to, I guess, really like attack them for, or like say, oh well, I'm not going to support like this person.
Gotcha. So the basic Comicsgate tenet, which is not any of the offshoots, not any of the backbiting that's been going on.
Yeah, it's essentially just like make your book, market your book, and if people like it, then people like it, and then hopefully they tune back for more eventually.
All right, so I've got the Indiegogo page up here. Again, ancient laptop. Most of the processor is going into running the show, and I think it's just the email sign up page right now.
Yeah, so for now the email sign up page is it's currently on my my Twitter along with my Instagram, and so far we have 70 signups for the book. I'm hoping to potentially get up to at least 200 before I actually end up launching the book, to have like some sort of platform to kind of like work off of.
All right, let's see if I can get some control over the hosting stream here. My mouse isn't turning into anything that wants to interact with a clip. It looks like I just took the... Come on. There we go. That might work now. All I'm going to get here is the header banner.
But yeah, and then if people want to look through my Instagram, it's also at Boogie-Bot Comics. Same with Twitter. I actually have a lot of artwork that I've been posting through Twitter along with the Instagram. The only issue with Indiegogo is that they don't give you a lot of, I guess, like space to actually put more than a couple of pictures on there. So that's my only issue with it.
I think if you want to use Indiegogo and get a decent amount of pictures, you've almost got to use one per tier, or create a video that's going to be a slideshow.
Yeah, and then the video that I actually have up for the Indiegogo, it's mostly just a teaser, but it has a couple of it has like a double page spread that I actually did for the book, and I feel like that one kind of gives a sense of what the artwork is actually going to be for the majority of the book, actually.
Okay, well, this isn't going to share, and I should have known better, so I'm going to exit out and just go straight back to the regular stream here. Goodness gracious. Oh, so when did you get the notion to develop this world and build this world out?
I actually had this idea in place. I had an idea similar for a robot sort of comic book ever since I was in middle school, but and I think back in 2014, that was whenever I actually had the main driving force to wanting to actually make like Robert into a full-fledged book.
Okay, and that's pretty much before crowdfunding really took off. I mean, there was some Kickstarter stuff going on around that time, but crowdfunding really wasn't then what it is now.
Yeah, I guess it's not like because everything is just blown up now, especially for the indie market.
I agree. And we got BAP2 in the chat here asked if we can post the link in the chat. Yes, we can post the link in the chat. In fact, BAP, if you look at the description of the video, it will actually be the first link there. It should be the first link there. So you can just get it from the description. That will take it there. I'm not in the YouTube vision of this, so if you are on YouTube or on Facebook watching it, either one, you can follow the description and get in there and sign up on the newsletter so that you'll be notified as soon as this campaign is ready to start taking funds. And how far are we from that, Boogie-Bot?
We were at 70 signups. However, for these 70 signups, I'm hoping to at least reach up to maybe 200, maybe within the next month, and then hopefully we'll get the ball running to actually launch the campaign, and then it'll be just mostly marketing the book like more and more, going on more streams, and then along with really showing off some more of the pages, because most of the pages that I've shown off, I have roughly 20 to 30% of the book completed already. But from the pages that I've shown off, I've only shown off about four or five completed pages, I believe.
Sure. So how many pages are you estimating this to be complete?
For this book, it'll end up being roughly around 60 to 65 pages.
Okay, so that's a good prestige-bound book.
Yeah, so because personally, like I've been liking a lot of the stuff that the DC Black Label has been doing, like for the past like year or so. Because I like that sort of like perfect bound kind of like single shot sort of stories that they've been doing recently.
Yeah. Are you going to go for the oversized format that they've got as well, or are you just going for the binding in a regular comic size?
I think I'm going for the regular comic size, mostly just because when I look at the bookshelves that I have, and when I put most of the because I tend to collect more trade paperbacks now, I kind of realize that it would fit a lot more with just like the standard sort of like comic size book.
So you're gonna make it so that it fits on our shelf and looks correct.
Yes.
You know, the DC's putting out a lot of titles though with that Black Label. Do you think that's going to catch on? Might that be the second standard? Because for a while it was like we had the comic books that were out, the 22-page floppies that we're familiar with, and then we had the magazine comics. Marvel had a whole bunch of black and white, Howard the Duck, Incredible Hulk. There was the Vampirella stuff, the eerie and creepy, and so we really had the comic book and the magazine, because they were the same size as a Time magazine or a Newsweek, what have you there. But Black Label just kind of like falls somewhere in the middle of those two sizes.
Yeah, I feel like with the DC Black Label sort of like standard that they've been doing right now, especially with I know there's one series that I've been collecting for a little bit. It's the new Question series.
Yeah.
I think that one, I think that'll actually end up being the standard, at least for DC, and then maybe Marvel's going to want to try to do something to that degree at some point. Mostly just because I don't think floppies are. I feel like there will still be floppies at comic book retailers, along with like other independent companies, along with like the main two, like DC and Marvel. But I think when they want to do maybe a more grandiose idea, like I think I can't remember if it was Jeff Johns that's going to be doing the Three Jokers soon.
Yes. I hope that's soon. That's a dangling plot thread that's been out there since 2014, and I've had enough. I want to answer the damn question, Jeff. I don't know if you were reading comics in that year, but because I don't know when you got into them year-wise. I know you said you were doing them in middle school, but everyone's 20-something on the internet behind an avatar. And but yeah, that was what was it? Forever Evil. Um, it was this huge arc in Justice League that Jeff Johns was writing. It was like, here was a big arc that jumped right into the next big arc and jumped right into the next big arc after that. And oh my God, it turns out that it's all been one giant arc in segments. And all it is Batman becomes the writer of the Mobius chair, and he says, "What's the Joker's real name?" And he's like, "No, that's impossible. It said there were 3 Jokers." And I'm like, well, ask them what all 3 names are. But no, that was that would have been too simple. And of course, if Marvel does go that way, the Black Label route, they can't copy DC, so they'll come up with their own size. You think, or will they try to come up with say, okay, it's a new industry standard, just for the sake of the people who make the bags and backers not having to make a Marvel and a DC size.
I mean, unless they start doing like, because I know with like some of their Black Label titles for DC, they do the either the standard 6.5 by 10.5 versus the 8.5 by 11, like the standard magazine size as well. Maybe Marvel will end up trying to make a new size right in between, like 9 by 10 or like 9 by 10.5 or something, just to kind of set themselves apart.
Marvel doesn't do the adult thing anymore with their comics, I don't think. I mean, they try to, but they try to do it in the standard comics, and it comes across as either stupid or preachy. But again, several decades ago, you had really edgy stuff that was in the black and white format. The Incredible Hulk, or the Rampaging Hulk, rather, and the Punisher. Those were very edgy, adult, violent, and sexy titles. Howard the Duck, for crying out loud! You've got a duck in bed with a naked Beverly, and you know what they're doing because he turns the lights out and winks at the camera.
Very raunchy, very violent, like clearly made for adult titles, but exactly. kids love the hell out of them.
Oh yeah, I mean, you had Beverly's bare breasts. This is right there in the in the comic. It was like, I was not a kid when I saw it. I'm like, I did not know Marvel did this back when I was a kid, and why didn't I find these? But of course, I just got the run of their Destroyer books that I found at flea market recently, of magazine-sized stuff. They're Remo Williams adventures, but so Marvel could go back to doing magazines, and DC could go to Black Label, and I would just like to see better comic stories overall, and that's what Comicsgate is trying to do with their comics. The only problem I see that Comicsgate has to overcome is not necessarily with repeat business, because we've seen different publishers doing crowdfunding put out more than one book. But we're, we like our pusher to give us something every week. We're hooked on this thing and have been addicted, for some of us, for decades. And we can't go a year and a half between issues of a book.
Yeah, and I think that's the main issue when it comes to like when you look at like YouTubers or like I guess for publishers now, like for Richard C. Meyer, for your boy Zach, he tends to have at least for this year, I think he has maybe 4 or 5 titles under his belt for this year alone.
Yeah, but you know what? He's saying that that's too many projects.
Exactly, and I think that's going to be the main issue when it comes to people in Comicsgate, just because we're not able to necessarily pump out the same amount of work. But to be fair, a lot of the artwork that comes out of Marvel right now, it might be monthly, but the artwork isn't up to par with a good chunk of indie creators now.
No, I can do it in MS Paint, and I can't draw up worth a lick. So, but yeah, we don't have the great art anymore. It's been very rushed out. I think we have storytellers, even though the stories that we're telling are crap. And I was on the Matriarchy last night talking about this, because they were talking about, well, is the fall off in comics and continuity, is it, as the part of is it the distribution of the comics, or is it the comic shops? I'm like, no, it's the editorial of the comic books themselves. They don't give a shit anymore. Um, you know, that's why none of these arcs make any sense when you see one person show up in one book and then they show up in another book and they're a totally different personality. Nobody's forcing. You don't have a group editor anymore who's willing to tell a writer no. Because as soon as you do, that writer is going to go onto Twitter and say, God, my editor's a jerk. I would tell my friends not to work with this guy because they got told no about something.
And I think that's one of the issues too, is that like when you look at most of the Marvel books now, it seems like there's always an event like almost every other like 2 months or so. Like they're always building up to some sort of big grandiose idea that either never plays out, or you have to look at the front, like the back of the front cover, because it'll tell you, oh, to understand this story, not only do you have to buy issue 1 of this, you also have to buy issue 12 of this series you didn't even know was going on,
Yep.
24 from this series, and then hopefully by the end of it, you've caught up completely.
And you know what? As soon as they started doing the text walls, that was the downfall of concise writing. Entry level, not entry level writing for the writer, but entry level for the reader of the books. Because you should be able to, and you used to be able to, pick up any comic book, and it didn't matter if it was part 2 of something. If you opened it up and there's Spider-Man laying on the ground all beat up, and you're like, how do you get beat up? It says, see last issue, and then it just keeps moving on. It's like, never mind. It's just, we're not going to say, last issue, paragraph after paragraph after paragraph. You're reading more words than were in the actual previous comic in the text wall than you are. But the story, the writer should be able to convey, he got beat up by the Hulk, moving on. And we're dealing with the aftermath of that now. And then if you're really that interested, you'll go back, you'll find the back issue of it. And if you're not, you didn't need to know all of it to enjoy the story that you now have in your hands.
Exactly. So like that's one of the main issues too, is that the fact that like they now expect you, the reader, to have to buy set amount of books just to understand a story, or if you didn't, you have to read this entirely long, just tedious page of just like dialogue, like word boxes from a character. But back in when I've read some of the older comics, especially like for Machine Man, any comic that I picked up from Machine Man, because I didn't start directly from issue 1. I think the first Machine Man issue that I ended up getting was, I believe, issue 4, and that one just put me right into the story. It never bored me. It just put me straight into the story, and it just said, oh, this happened, let's go forward with this issue.
What I would like to really see happen, and I don't know if it will, or if we're like a couple of years out from still getting this, but I'd like to see us go from crowdfunding books to crowdfunding a publishing house that can stand alone without future crowdfunding, so that it can survive off its own sales and then house many of these crowdfunded writers and say, okay, you're living on the sales of these books and whatever we can put with them. But you know what? They're not really living off the sales of the books anymore. Now they're selling all the tchotchkes and the tiers and the perks that go with it, which now explains why you're paying $60 for a comic book that's not even printed yet, because you might get a postcard or something with it. If I was Ethan Van Sciver and somebody said, hey, we're going to pay you to draw Cyberfrog every month, he'd probably turn it down, and wouldn't blame him. He's making $1 million a year off the one book he does.
And which I think that's also one of the issues when it comes to like a lot of like independent creators, because the reason why they either become independent creators or like independent storytellers is because whatever they make, they're hoping that it obviously just like they're their own boss. They'd rather not have to be tied down by somebody who's telling them like, well, you didn't meet this specific page count that we were asking for, or you didn't meet up to the standard that like, oh, that this other company did. I know with like companies like with Alterna, I think they kind of have like a nice business model where your titles are still your own creator-owned titles, but they're publishing the books through their company.
Yeah, with Alterna, that there is no house staff. There's no, I'm a writer for Alterna. I'm an artist with Alterna. You'll see it in Peter Smetty's timeline when he replies to people who are asking, can I submit? I'm a writer. Do you have any artists? He's like, no, we want to look at the whole package. You have to submit, 22 pages of story fully drawn out and ready to print. And then they will decide, yes, we will do this. We'll work on this one with you. But it's still a good model, and you're selling the books cheap. I don't know what the artists and writers are making off of it, since it's only going out for like $1.50 a book. But it's better than not getting printed at all. And that was what Image was doing. The creators of Image were saying, hey, we're tired of Marvel and DC, mostly Marvel, taking all the money for the work we do, and we could make 100% of the profit.
Mm-hmm.
But eventually Image evolved into something where it's like, yeah, we'll print other people's books and we'll take a nice chunk out of it ourselves.
Because this is essentially like a bank loan technically, right? Because like don't you have to pay up front like a certain amount, and if you can't reach it with your book sales, then it's no like there's no skin off their bones. It would be skin off like your bones, the creator, if your book doesn't sell well.
Yeah. I couldn't say for sure because I have not submitted. I don't write comics. I write outside of Critical Blast. I'm the writer on the Destroyer series, which is why I was getting the Destroyer magazine titles from Marvel earlier, because I was wanting to read what had gone on in the decades prior. But I can't draw worth a lick, and I would never be able to find an artist who would be willing to partner with me on a project, because you draw your own work. You're writing it and you're drawing it, right?
Yeah. So for all the artwork, for all the work that I've been doing for Robert, I've actually been the writer, the penciler, inker, color, like the color, and I will be the letterer whenever I get all the pages done eventually.
Okay. Well, see, that's great when you can do it all yourself. But there are a few of the comics crowdfunding people. I shouldn't say Comicsgate because it extends that beyond that. But there are several that they're just the writer, and they're crowdfunding their book, and they've got artwork, obviously, but they had to pay an artist in advance. So, when you see a writer who's crowdfunding a book, you have to understand that when you're investing into it, the writer's already in the hole by maybe $3,000 to $6,000, and he's trying to recoup just that to break even, and then he's going to pay for the printing of the book, because artists want paid. They don't want to if they're not half creator or full creator, then they don't want to take a risk on your idea and say that they might get paid, because they might get nothing, or they might get a good portion of $1 million project. Who knows? But it's a lottery ticket, and most lottery tickets don't pay out.
Yeah, because there was one book actually, because I believe towards the end of last year or the beginning of this year, there was a person that I actually came into contact with. Have you read or have you heard about this comic book called Bric-a-Brac?
No, I haven't heard that one.
So the creator, his name is Ryan Hack, and that's his actual last name.
Dude, if you're going to write books, change your last name if your name's Hack. Don't.
But
either that or really own it.
Well, yeah, and he seems to own it pretty well, because the first book that he made, it came out during last December for Bric-a-Brac, and the beginning of this year, he had this idea for an anthology series, sort of like a horror anthology series called Unspeakable Text. And the way how all the stories in this anthology kind of tied in together was through this magical sort of like horrific book that like all of the dark like creatures or like demons would like come off of it. Okay. And he essentially put out a call to any artists and writers or anybody who he wrote most of the tales that an artist would then draw a couple of pages for. So I kind of thought, well, maybe this would be my foot in the door. Maybe I can actually draw a couple of pages. Even if I'm not getting paid anything, maybe this would be my first published work through like crowdfunding.
Yeah.
So, and I tried it, and I did do the pages that were asked and everything, but unfortunately, the crowdfunding project, it didn't get the funding that it needed on Indiegogo or Kickstarter.
Okay. Well,
So
that's why I didn't hear of it probably.
yeah, and because we tried doing everything, we tried doing the like some other live streams, especially for him, which is why with Robert right now, I've made it sort of like a prerogative to actually try to really reach out to creators and like to other creators along with other streamers who have platforms, because there's so many different platforms here on YouTube, on Twitter, or like some other sites like Instagram as well, because if you won't be able to market yourself if you don't ask, because you still have to ask.
Absolutely.
It's still an ask, and maybe somebody might take a chance on you, or maybe they see something in your work that they really either respect and want to promote, or just anything like that. And with the book, um, it didn't get the funding that it needed. However, he's not quitting necessarily. He wants to still publish it at some point when we can kind of regroup and then re-upload it to Indiegogo or Kickstarter with maybe a larger following to it.
Sure. And that's what I hear a lot of the successful crowdfunders talk about. And what you're doing right now is that before you launch your campaign, you go out and you do the live streams with people, you talk to different audiences, and you get the name of your project known out there. And you collect the newsletter information so that, when you do launch, it's not an unknown quantity. It's something that, oh yeah, I remember this guy talking about this, and he showed this picture, and we saw that picture. I'm going to go check it out. And hopefully then you've got something in your Indiegogo package that's going to draw them in and make them click one of the give me money buttons.
And especially with Indiegogo, because most of the projects that people back, there's always a time sort of like stamp on it where, because you're essentially paying for a book that either might have not been completed yet or is in very early production, but you believe in the work so much, or you like the creator so much, that you're willing to pay for this book before it's even in your hands, because you either just believe in it or you just really love the project itself.
Yeah. Now, how much of the book do you plan to actually have finished before you kick off? I mean, some people will start off their campaign while they're still getting, things rolling. Some of them will say, nope, I'm going to have all the pages done and then I'm going to crowdfund it.
So far, again, I believe I have 20 to 25% of the book like completed already for the pages, fully inked, penciled, colored. The lettering it won't take that long for the lettering, just because I'll go back into the program that I'm using just to actually, like letter it, and it'll be a lot more concise whenever I go through all the pages to read them, like one by one. But that's the main reason why I'm doing the mailing list right now for last month and then this month as well, to kind of spread the word while also working on the pages like in tandem with it. And then
Now,
whenever I launch the project within maybe a month, I'll have maybe 50% of the book or even 60% of the book actually done.
all right. You said you did a couple of pages for the Bric-a-Brac project that didn't come through all the way with that writer. Have you done any comic book work before? I mean, what's your study of putting pages together and actually creating a comic book?
At my high school that I went to, we actually had a comic book class that was put into, which lucky for me and my friend, we completely loved comics. He especially loved he loves like manga and like anime, and we were just like so amped up just to have a class that we can actually, because this was at like a fine arts sort of like high school, and we were just surprised to actually see them put in an actual comic book class for, like, because we felt like, oh, this was like a godsend just to us.
Yeah, I would have majored in that if they'd have had classes in my high school for comic books, because I've been a hardcore comic book collector since I was 4 years old, which, God, it's 1971. We had where I grew up in a small town, one town over from Sparta, Illinois, and for the old timers, when you say Sparta, Illinois in comic books, they get it because it used to be that World Color Press was located in Sparta, 9,000 people in the whole town. Half of them worked at World Color Press, half of them worked in the coal mines. World Color Press was where every comic book in the world, as well as TV Guide and Playboy magazine and a bunch of other things, was printed right there. One source there.
Oh, so you were
There was
at
no
the
place to
heart
buy
of it
comic
then.
books. Oh, at the very heart of it. And the people who worked there, they took home the overruns of everything. So if you knew somebody who worked at the comic book plant or the printing plant or whatever the people called it, because people had different names, you knew where to go to get books, and they were free or they were in their yard sales. I said I was 4, and going to the local barber and getting my hair cut there, and I'd sit there and I'd read the Superman comic books and that he'd have in his magazine rack there, and I'd always beg, can I take this one home? And he's like, well, I won't have anything here for anybody else to read, but he always let me take it home. And I had to search around. I've got it in. I have issues, but I searched around for that very first Superman comic book that I remember reading, and it's part of my collection now. I'll have to dig it out sometime, put it on a stream with me, just to say first book. Went out and had to get it again, but I learned how to read off of those things. I said I was 4 and I was reading the books. I was actually reading the books. Mm-hmm. So I knew how to read before I got into first grade and didn't tell anybody. They found out by accident and they promoted me to second grade for reading, and that was sucky. But I've learned to keep my mouth shut since then about what I can do. Typical underachiever.
To be a humble man.
Yes. Don't tell anybody what you can do. They'll want you to do it. But yeah, if I were able to do comic books in high school, I still wouldn't be able to draw. I've tried my hand at that, and I could barely draw Cynical Man comics, and those were stick figures. So I've always been very envious of people who could just sit down and sketch something out. I'm like, my God, that looks like something. I know it's just lines on paper. It's not a pipe, but it sure is. It looks cool. So I would love to do a comic book. I've got I'm a published novelist. I've done work for The Destroyer. I've done work for Telos in Great Britain with books. But I tried one time. I did a comic book. I wrote 3 issues of a 6-issue miniseries for a guy who wanted to be a publisher. And I said, you know what? I will write the book, and then you pay me out of what publishes. But again, artists like to be paid up front. And they had this wonderful artist who sent us his Marvel tryout stuff. His Spider-Man was fantastic. I sent him character concepts of the entire team, it was going to be a high school superhero group going to normal everyday high school. And the conceit there was that so many private institutions had risen up, like the Xavier School or the government this and the government that, think tanks, that were always taking off the superpowered teenagers and training them there, that there wasn't going to be anybody left in public school, and the funding was drying up for it. So public schools had to respond by offering opportunities for the differently abled or meta-abled students to keep them in public school. So they had extracurricular activities, and it was like, I forget what I ended up calling it, but it was basically the future superheroes of America kind of thing. Like you'd have future farmers, you had future superheroes. And the book was called Hero Club, and Rajiv Golay was set up to do the artwork. He sent back a group shot of everybody in it. I was like, oh my God, that looks exactly like the characters in my head that I just described to you. He's like, yep, okay, publisher, I need this much money and blue boards. Well, I'll get them to you when I can. Can you just start anyway? Nope. And guess what?
And that was the end of it.
That was the end of that. was like, well, I guess I don't need to write the other 3 issues of this 6-issue miniseries. I've still got some of it on zip file somewhere if I ever wanted to dig it back out, but I won't. I would rather just start something fresh because nothing will ever look as good as what he sent with those character sketches. So I guess you did some comics in high school as projects.
Yeah, so some of the projects that I ended up doing, one of them was actually for Robert, and it was it was sort of like, I guess, like how some cartoons they usually kind of have like a pilot or something, or like the quote unquote like original idea for it, and then they might sit on it for a couple of years and then bring it back and then put a kind of like fresh new coat of paint and like, or just completely change the idea into something new, because your mind's always working to like the gears are always turning to kind of create something with a project that you might have not remembered when you were younger, and you dig it up again and you realize, well, there's something here that you can actually really make something out of.
Do you still have that original?
Yeah, and one of the perks that I'm actually hoping to put for the Indiegogo
Gonna
would
say.
be, yeah, it would be an exclusive perk just to, or I'm hoping if the campaign does well, I was either hoping to give a free copy of that original one, like issue 1 of Robert that I had done so long ago, and just to kind of like show people like if this was the roots of it, like it's almost like a piece of history along with the new version, which is the main story, like the actual, I don't want to say magnum opus, but the like, I guess what the story is now compared to like
Yeah.
what it was before.
You could have a stretch goal set up to where, hey, if we hit this, then it'll be 75 pages, and those last 15 pages will be the original Robert. Or you can say you can buy Robert the book, and for another different tier, you can buy Robert and the Ash Can, which would be the original work,
Mhm.
which seems to be the standard sort of tiers that people do if they had something that they'd worked on before and they're turning it into something more polished. But have you put thought into what kind of other tiers or stretch goals you might want to have involved with the project?
So for the other tiers, I'm kind of hoping to I'm hoping to add maybe a free poster, maybe 11 by 17 poster, along with it. Because when I've talked around to some people on streams, it seems like most people are kind of they're more leaning towards if you're gonna get a poster for free, they'd rather have it folded and placed with the comic because it's easier to transport to them. Because I'm actually a poster collector, and personally, like it hurts sometimes to see some of these posters that are so well made that have these creases on them.
I
But
know. Yeah, I would rather, for me, rather than a 16 by whatever poster that got folded up into a comic book square, I would rather an 11 by 17 print that could be mailed flat.
mhm.
On something even stiffer, and I can I can frame 11 by 17 or whatever decent size is, bigger than 8 by 10, but something that fits in a flat box with your graphic novel that gets shipped, because that looks just as nice, and you get the stiffer kind of paper, not necessarily cardboard. I don't know what you call the card stock,
Like
that it's on,
cardstock, or
yeah, it's something nice. Giclee, Giclee. I'm not an artist, so I don't know, but it's a very thick, heavy paper. So, but again,
yeah,
that's just thoughts.
I think that's one of the perks, or I was either because I'm still in the planning process of what the perks will be, but I am hoping that maybe a poster to come along with it, or the one thing that I've been really getting into recently has been collecting like patches for like uh, personally, because I have a backpack that I want to actually add a lot more like patches that I get from conventions or when I do
Yeah.
like road trips and stuff like that to just various places. And I think a patch for the main character, just the face itself, I think that would be really cool as like just like a nice little kind of like a tchotchke sort of like thing, or even stickers to go along with it.
Yeah. Now, stickers I do work with. I've seen a lot of places where you can get the patches where you send up your artwork and they say, okay, here's the patches that we'll embroider. So you could at least start ahead of time to get costs to know what you'd have to hit before you'd be able to afford one of those for everybody. Stickers are cheap. These are our 3-inch round stickers, 3.5-inch round stickers for our logo.
That's a really nice
And
sticker.
this is stickermule.com. They will do everything. In fact, it doesn't have to be round sticker or square sticker. They will do the die cut thing. If you just send them something on a transparent background, they will put like an 1/8 of an inch border around it and just cut it to fit. It's beautiful stuff. And if you're watching the stream and you want one of these, hit us up in our DMs. We will get you one of these. All you got to do is just kind of let us know where to send it, and we'll throw a stamp on an envelope and get it out to you. We'd be happy to do it. I got plenty, so you can have them. They're nice and shiny. But yeah, stickers are a great thing. The patches, I don't have anything to put patches on, so I've kind of avoided the patches when they've been available as perks. So I'm like, what am I going to do with it, But stickers, they go on the back of the laptop. I'm good for 5 years until I have to get a new laptop, and then I got to replace my stickers.
And then I'm hoping one of the other things that I'm hoping to include with all the perks would be a bookmark. But for the mailing list, if you sign up for the mailing list, you actually get an exclusive bookmark to go along with the book.
Now, what about printing? I mean, this is your first rodeo, I'm assuming, here, actually getting something put together. Have you spoken with printers to know what you need to know up front, or are you going to kind of figure that out as you go along?
No, I've actually I haven't specifically spoken to printers, but I've spoken to people who actually have dealt with printers such as like a Print Ninja, or even the one that I'm currently looking at is I think Mixum or Mirum, Mixum Print.
Mixum, I think, is one. Sounds familiar.
Yeah.
I wouldn't swear, but
I think
there
that was the
are a
name.
few of them.
But for Mixum specifically, I think so far that one is the printer that I potentially might be using, just because the product that they've been putting out recently has actually been really, really good, and the costs seem to be in the same like wheelhouse. Like, it's not like completely like cheap books either, but it seems like their costs they seem to keep the costs like down pretty well. And especially for me being like an upcoming crowdfunder, I have to kind of like see where the costs will end up coming from or where they'll go to. But I know for Print Ninja and Mixum, I know those two are the ones specifically that I'm eyeing right now.
Yeah, and then you got to buy your Gemini mailers, which those are not cheap.
Yeah, and then I've looked into those too, so that's the other. And I know a lot of people tend to kind of like they kind of tend to like take a step back whenever they see the shipping costs, because most of these books have always been from, at least from the ones that I've been buying, they've been at least like $10 for shipping. And but now that I look into a lot of like the Gemini mailer costs or even the printing costs, like it makes sense as to why you're needing to spend this much. And especially too if the product is as top-notch quality, when there's months ahead of when you're actually going to get it, once you finally get it, you kind of understand the amount of work that was put into actually producing the book, but then also what went into actually like printing it and then packaging it. Because some people end up sending the book off to distributors for other distributors to do it, but I believe I'll actually end up being the person to distribute the book to the backers.
Yeah, you don't want to be responsible for somebody else's lack of quality control and start having books come back to you because it got dinged or somebody didn't package it right. Hell, it's people who should know the best are Diamond, and they're constantly, if you ever watch our bi-weekly stream, the LCS guys, we got one tomorrow, 7 o'clock on this channel, 7 Central. We have local comic shop guys from all around the country just sitting around table, and it's consistently, this is what I got shorted this week from Diamond, and the whole stack is just a mishmash of stuff. They don't put the books in order, and they're sliding around, and here's the variant copy. They put it on top, and it got dented and wrinkled. Those are the pros. And they're shipping bunches of books. So, but yeah, it's at least if you're going to ship it priority, which you should, because well, nowadays you do get tracking on media, but you're going to have other stuff in there, so you can't send it media. But it's going to be about $6 to $7 just for the transportation of the book, so that you can have tracking
for
on
the
it.
packaging. Mm-hmm.
Then the packaging, and then you got to take into the amount of the cost. The labeling, you're not going to sit there and hand write on each one of them. I'm assuming you're going to want to run sheets of labels through a printer. So you got ink, you got labels, you got electricity. It all adds up. So, and if anybody buys it from overseas, God help you, because you just went into the hole.
Yeah, and then that's also one of the other perks too, because a good chunk of the people that I've been actually promoting the book to, they actually live in Australia, which is kind of strange. Like I know I actually went on the first stream that I went on was for Michael Bancroft for I believe the book he's doing is called like The Lucent.
Yeah, we've had him on here. He's a great guy.
And I know he lives in Australia, so one of the perks that I've seen a lot of people tend to do is they'll usually do like a 2-pack where they only have to pay the same amount for shipping, and then they'll just buy the 2 books because it's technically a lot cheaper that way to actually get them overseas.
Yeah, I'm still waiting for somebody to figure out that they can. If it were me, I would print. I would have a printer domestically in the U.S. If you're living in the U.S., that's domestically. Mm-hmm. And then I'd have a printer in the U.K. and I'd have a printer in Australia. And I would send all 3 of them the print files for the interiors. And then I would have all the covers printed domestically, period. And the reason I would do that is because then I would sign all the covers, package up however many plus needed, and send them off to the foreign distributors. I'm sending out 2 international packages that way. And I'm saying, okay, bind the covers to those books, and then you distribute them to locally. It's a cheaper shipping for them to send it from, a printer in England to addresses in England, and a printer in Australia to addresses in Australia. Mm-hmm. But again, you have to really know that they're going to take care of what they're doing, because these printers are not collectible comic book printers. They are book printers and magazine printers. Mm-hmm. And it's just periodicals to them. Yes, just slap them in a stack and send them off. Yes, your book will now be bound in Australia with your signature on it, and you didn't have to go there to sign it, and you didn't have to send it fully assembled. But to them, it's still just it's a comic book.
To them, it's just a regular work day. It's essentially just what the United States Postal Service will do. They're not like, even if something necessarily like says fragile on it, they'll see that and say like, oh well, I guess I should take a little extra care. But so yeah, it's a little fragile. You kind of have to.
Yes, it is.
You kind of have to put your trust into the people that you're actually going to be sending, like that you're hoping will send the books off in one piece, hopefully to the backers that will end up getting it.
And yeah, if I ever do one, if I ever work with an artist and I pay them up front, if I win a lottery, I will do a comic book. Actually, if I get an extra $25, I'm going to buy DC Comics away from AT&T and reboot the whole thing. But that's neither here nor there.
But not for 5G though.
No, not for 5G. It won't be 5G. No, if I reboot DC Comics, it would be like, okay, 6 months off, go out and recruit the writers that I want before they die. And then start off with Action Comics, Detective Comics, and a couple of other books. And it's going to be day 1, year 1 for everybody involved. Just poof, here we are. And it's going to be 5 years before you get Robin in a Batman book. And it's going to be Dick Grayson, and he's going to be 13. So, and he's going to stay that way for another 25 to 30 years. Because I'm not going to age these characters. That's where I think DC started going kind of crazy with their timeline, was the moment that Dick Grayson put on that Nightwing outfit. I'm like, okay, clock just started ticking somewhere, because now Batman, who Bob Rozakis has always told us, Batman and Superman are both 29 years old and will always be 29 years old. Now Batman's 29 with a 12-year-old son and 3 other men that he's raised from teenager to adulthood. That doesn't fly anymore.
Like, that just doesn't add up there.
No, Well, somebody posted a picture on Twitter that got past editorial. Again, lazy editors. Uh, Damien's looking down at Batman in Crime Alley, and Batman saying, it was 10 years ago that my parents died on this spot 10 years ago. It all happened, and they're like, wait a second, 10 years ago he was 8 years old, so he's 18 and he's raised 4 boys. Yeah, it should have been like 20 years ago at least, but yeah, I think everybody expects Batman to be like 45 now, and
That's what I've always estimated his age as, just because with with him having like Dick Grayson, Jason Todd, Tim Drake, Damien, it just seems more likely that he's in his either like early 40s or I wouldn't say late 40s. I would say mostly like or early 40s, same as like with Superman.
Yeah. Superman I could put in his 30s, but Batman has had to raise children. I mean, not everybody can get as lucky as Superman and, have a baby that becomes a 12-year-old, that becomes a 17-year-old, and, out the door. That would be great. It's like, that was fun raising kids. That's easy. Let's do it again. It's over within a year. But I'm trying to read what Bap just wrote here. I was going to back a book, but with the international shipping, it would run $100, $100 US. Could not pay for that book. No. Yeah, international shipping is something that people are going to have to figure a way around or get creative with, perhaps through a method like I just described there. I think that's my role in CG. I can't produce a book, but I can offer great creative ideas about production and marketing. I'm a marketing guy. I keep preaching the trading card thing, and I don't know if trading cards is a kind of a tier that you might have thought about doing, or a perk for Robert, because you had mentioned posters. I know a lot of people are doing trading cards. My sermon on trading cards is that stop doing 9 trading cards for your book and saying, look, they make a complete picture. Do 1 trading card for your book. Get with 8 other CG creators or crowdfunding creators that you promise not to backstab until all your projects are done.
Mm-hmm.
Wherein lies the impossibility. And have one artist draw all 9 cards in one assembled puzzle picture, the way we did with our Marvel cards when we used to collect them and put them into 9 sleeves and say, oh, look, it makes a great big action shot with all 9 of these characters. Have somebody do that with 9 distinct projects, one big picture, and then somebody buys Robert and says, oh, I'm going to get the trading card. And they buy Cyberfrog just because everybody knows that title. And they get the trading card, and all of a sudden it's like, wait a second, these 2 are by the same artist. Oh, I'm reading further now, and I see that they make a assembled picture with these 7 other projects. These are 7 other projects I was not going to invest in, but because I am an OCD completist comic book nerd, I must now have them to get my all 7 cards. 9 people just helped out each other sell their projects because of a trading card.
Like the whole collect and connect sort of like picture for it.
Exactly.
Because some people are just going to want to collect the cards themselves because they just want to complete that itself for like what it is. Because it's like, I guess in their eyes, they kind of see it as like a collector's item too, because you're reaching all these different projects and it's for one specific image that you're building to.
Right. And how many people are going to buy all 9 of the projects to get all 9 of the cards? They'll assume not everybody. So they'll be one of the few people to actually have a full set. And then they'll flip it on eBay or something. And then the people who didn't, get them will say, well, hey, I don't collect cards, but I know that somebody's going to be wanting this card. So I'm going to get the level with the card, and then I'll sell the card to somebody who's trying to put together the whole set.
Mm-hmm.
Try to make money off that way. But either way, it would be creators helping creators, pushing each other up. The whole rising tide raises all boats kind of thing. But again, that's all I am, is idea guy. I throw it out there. I make no money off of it. That's up to you guys to do it.
I do love that idea though, especially like with some of my friends and people that I work with for like I know that they do artwork as well, and I know for the friend that I have that I went to high school with, I know he's got a lot of great ideas that he would want to actually do too for like maybe a project at some point. And that card idea honestly does seem like a really, really like it just seems like a nice sort of thing to kind of like get like the audience sort of like invested into coming back for round two or even round three.
Yeah. And the other people who are doing their cards, they're doing 9 cards in one big picture, but it's all their own project. It's like, hey, buy my project and get these 9 cards that make one picture. That's not the chase. That doesn't set up the excitement of, having to seek out the other 8 cards of the set to your one. This is like, oh, it's all 9 in the package. I'm not even going to undo them because they're complete right here.
Well, that and also a lot of the times they end up showing the picture anyways. So once you, because like it'll be like a picture that they use to promote the project, and then once you collect the cards, it'll like you'll realize like afterwards, like oh, well, it's just the same picture that I saw before. It's not like an exclusive image.
Yeah. Now, and that's what you should, what people should do. Again, I'm getting into my art director mode here, which is something I'm very good at. Just can't draw. I can tell people what to do. But every one of those projects should then have, the color picture of their card, and then right below that should be the 3x3 grid of the whole picture in a grayscale mode, except for where their card is. That should be full color, and then that should direct people to say, oh, look, I need to go get these other cards. It's a chase. The chase has always been the thing in collecting that has used to make it fun. Back before they really, really made the chase cards and chase items hard to find, like your action figures or your variant covers that come 1 to 1,000, and then you just have to go to eBay and find them. But when I was a kid, spending $1 on a pack of cards and then ripping them open, and said, "Oh, I finally got the one I was looking for." That was fun. That's what's missing from comics and nerd culture these days. The fun. Something sucked the fun out of it a long time ago.
Yeah, and then that's one of the main things as to why, like with the book, I just want this to be a fun sort of adventure. Again, like the way how I've been kind of marketing this to people was that it's the sci-fi steampunk western graphic novel of the future today.
And I love that mix. You talk about steampunk, cyberpunk, and western. You won't remember the show. It's way before your time, and it's way before the Will Smith movie of the same name. But there was a show called Wild Wild West.
Oh no, I've actually seen some of the episodes because
Okay.
when I was younger, unfortunately I did see the Will Smith Wild Wild West, but I went back to see the original Wild Wild West.
Good. It inspired you to go look up the original. That was a fun kind of. That was steampunk before steampunk was named anything. All these adventures that you could only make with the technology that existed at the time, stretched out to a science fiction kind of level. Mm-hmm. But it was a fun series, and that's what Robert kind of reminds me of. It's like this could be a chapter in the Wild Wild West, except that it's in the far future there.
Yeah, because it's just what I'm trying to make it as is just it's somewhat of a culmination of what makes westerns, but also robot stories or like just tech, sort of like tech stories, just really fun because it's some of the characters that you see that are made out of like steampunk materials or cyberpunk sort of like aesthetics. It's just a fun world that like I feel like having all this to kind of like play around with, that it'll give me somewhat of an edge to really make something that looks kind of unique in its own sort of thing.
Very cool. Now, is this a one and done book, or is this the first chapter of an ongoing story arc? Or
I'm hoping to make more, Robert, when this thing is done, because I do have a lot of ideas when it comes to like the ending of this book and how it could play off into something else. But with this book, I still want it to be its own. If people want to back it and just read it as like a one and done, then that's fine. Like it'll be its own self-contained story, but with room to continue from there.
Right. sort of like how the first Harry Potter novel was one and done, but you knew there was going to be something else next year, another full adventure, but an ongoing story arc with the same characters.
Exactly, or even like with Back to the Future, because the ending of the first Back to the Future, it did end with that somewhat cliffhanger with the Doc kind of coming back, but
Yeah.
you could still watch it as its own thing and just kind of go, oh, well, maybe we might not see that adventure, but we got a really nice adventure in this movie that we saw.
In our heads, we can have all kinds of infinite adventures that they go on to that will never happen, which is how I treated the end of the first Matrix movie, because I can't keep the other two movies in my head. It's like, no, I'm going back to the first. It ended with the first one. Anyhow, that's totally off the rails here. It's been fun having you on the show, and I really think it's a very unique concept. There's a lot of crowdfunded titles out there, and they're all getting to be genre defying, because they're not just superhero, and they're not just Western, and they're not just sci-fi anymore. They're blending bits and pieces of all the good stuff into things that are totally unique, which is what makes comics and creating literature a fun thing for everybody. I keep hearing that the industry is dying. I do not think the industry is dying. I think the current incarnation of the industry is dying, but I think it's just shriveling up into a chrysalis, and it's going to reemerge into something new. I think that this crowdfunding thing is actually a renaissance for comics, and what we've gotten used to might die, but even if DC and Marvel disappeared tomorrow, I have learned that there are at least 20 other publishers out there that I never heard of in the past 2 years that are producing quality work that I've been picking up, because my LCS guy is huge on the indies, and he keeps saying, hey, you want to review something for your website? There's a new #1 from this company. I'm like, who's that company? He's like, well, here, take a look at it. I'm like, okay, put it on the stack. I'm going to take this one home, and it's all good stuff. So, that's
really the fun part about it, is that like there's so many new things coming out of comics, not just from the mainstream, and even some niche things that are coming out of the mainstream. I know, like I've been going back to read Mike Mignola's old Hellboy books, just like for the omnibuses, and I've been really digging those a lot recently.
All right, well, we're actually over the hour. Not that we're hard kept to a time limit. We just kind of talk until we're done talking. Again, I really like the concept of Robert. Looking forward to getting a fuller launch page up here. So for everybody who's watching, the link will be in the description. Apparently, I managed to omit it this time. That's what happens when you. I asked for people to sign up for things, and I ended up getting people actually responding. So we have live streams lined up, and I created all of them. so they're all sitting out there ready to go to just jump into. And I'm surprised that I didn't link somebody else's project in your description. Instead, I just missed it entirely. For those who want to come back, tomorrow night at 7 is the LCS guys. We will be talking with Ewell Carter from Berkeley, California, Michael Tierney from Little Rock, Arkansas, Dave Dyer from Belleville, Illinois, Ryan Seymour from Cleveland, Ohio, and we are going to have Larry's Comics joining us from Maryland, and Comic Perch. So it will be a full house, and we've got a lot to talk about. Sunday is just the weekly chill stream. We'll have Mike Murphy on here from Deepwood. Monday night is, all of these are at 7 p.m., by the way. Monday night, we'll be talking about Confederate Monster. Tuesday is Red Eyes. Wednesday is Blood Realm. So it's going to be a full week. And Thursday, if the schedule works out, we will have a special guest on here who I'm not going to name yet. But if you are familiar with all the Whisper Network, Me Too happening in the comic book industry, guess what? It's happening in the animation industry as well. And we're going to have somebody on talking about how they've been blacklisted from the animation industry, and the Whisper Network that carries on there that targets people in that industry as well. So you won't want to miss that. I keep calling you Boogie because that's the only name I've got for you. I can't.
That's what a lot of people have been kind of going by for a little while now for the Boogie-Bot or the friendly bot so far from a lot of the streams that I've been on, and it's been working.
Okay, well you have thus been christened. So Boogie, it's been a pleasure. Let us know when you get further along here, when you start collecting money. We'll have you back on here again. Try to push to reach those goals. And everybody, go to the description. If you're catching the replay, the description will have a link in there that will take you to the Indiegogo for signing up for the newsletter, so that you'll know right away when the campaign does begin. Good night, Bap. And Robert, once again, if they do sign up for the newsletter, what does that give them that people who don't sign up for the newsletter get?
For everybody who signs up for the newsletter, you guys will get an exclusive bookmark that goes along with your trade paperback for your graphic novel of Robert, the comic book Generations in the Making.
Did I just call you Robert when I?
I didn't want to correct you.
It's staring me in the face from the screen here. It's right up at the top, so it's like subliminal messaging. Robert.
And for anybody who signs up, make sure you confirm for your email when you do sign up.
Yes, don't let it go spam. Check your spam folders if you don't get it. So for Critical Blast, I am RJ Carter, and we will see you every night of the week for the rest of this coming week. Thanks, guys.
Hi. Thanks for stopping by for another Critical Blast video. The internet is a big place, and we know there are lots of other places you could be other than here, and we appreciate you being here immensely. If you enjoyed this kind of content, we hope you'll return for more. If you click the subscribe button, you'll get a little notification of when we produce new video content. If you would like to help the channel out, there are many ways to do so. Just visiting our main hub, criticalblast.com, will do wonders. But if you're more of a show me the merchandise type of person, there are links in the description of this video to our t-shirt shop, as well as links to Amazon for the books we publish under the Critical Blast Publishing imprint, including the urban fantasy anthology Gods and Services and the YA superhero novel Bulletproof by Stephen J. Mitchell. Thanks again for visiting this video. We hope you had a blast.
And that